Indeed.
Now, for 40 years, SMA has put customers first. However, we really didn't have a formal way of thinking about this philosophy as a pillar of our company strategy.
So we're going to formalize our strategy around what is considered customer first, customer-centric organization. That sounds like Peter Drucker to me.
It does. It does. It is Peter Drucker, 1954.
Now, Peter may not have said this, but I'm going to say and that is customer electric.
Right.
Now, Bernie has written a lot about this topic, and there's an upcoming book on customer-centric strategy, which will be co-authored with SMA. Now, maybe we're going to call the book Customer Electricity. Now, please type your questions in the chat.
Okay, we'll begin with the basics. So Bernie, let's start with, how do you define customer centricity?
So customer centricity involves learning about the marketplace, learning about customers, bringing that information back into the organization and reflecting upon what it means organization-wide, and then taking an organization-wide response to that intelligence. That can take three forms. Number one is products, services, your value proposition. Second is where to play, the choice of what segments to go after. And third is, very aggressively, the ability to kind of shape the evolution of where the market's going. So you're leading the customers in a particular direction. In the case of the former two, you're kind of understanding customers and accepting where they are and meeting them where they're at. In the case of the third strategy, it's actually leading the customer in a particular direction that makes sense for them. You're not forcing them, you're anticipating the likely moves our customer is going to make, and then you move them in that particular direction. A good example of that would be Uber. In other words, no customers can come back and say, hey, listen, 10, 15 years ago, what I really need is a peer-to-peer thing that's going to work on my app. And, that's not going to happen. But customers are going to have pain points in that overall customer experience. So if you deliver something that says, I can actually solve that pain point, I can actually go into the marketplace and figure out a way to actually bring your clean transportation that's on time, easy to use, right? That's leading and shaping markets. Customers didn't have that behavior before, right? So good firms do both. They both accept the market as is and compete in time period one, and they shape and lead the evolution of market in time period two.
That requires being bold, like we were with Todd.
That's right.
Actually, Todd is a shaping market behavior phenomena because, customers before, when they try to look for proposals, they would kind of aggregate, they would call you and then you go off and disappear for 3 weeks trying to aggregate people, right? Now it's down to like 10 minutes where you can select people and find them. That's a shaping behavior. It's not unlike Netflix, right? No one knew of binge watching, right? Now you're binge watching, right? That's a shaping behavior, right? You never used to do that, right? We never used to find out, hey, if you like this program, what other programs do you go to, right? So all that stuff is new behavior, right? And Todd is a shape. The great thing about Todd is market leaders shape markets. They don't respond. They're not followers. They're shaping. Why do they shape markets? It's because they've spent a lot of time learning about markets and knowing where markets are likely to go. And all they're doing is slipstreaming into that wake and kind of driving customers in a particular direction.
They're not creating the wake.
They could be creating a way. They actually could be creating a way. You're right. There are some instances where that does happen.
All right. So now, Bernie, how do you prioritize customer needs when they might conflict with your business objectives?
So this is a really important point. When people talked about customer centricity 30 years ago, they talked about meeting customer needs, at whatever customers want, we deliver. That's actually the wrong way to think about it. You want to be able to deliver customer needs where you make money. So it's got to be a win-win. So whenever you're delivering, so customers may say, hey, guess what? I want that nice proposal, but rather than spend $700,000 on it, I want to do it for $8. And you say, yeah, happy to do that, right? That doesn't make any sense, right? You got to do it profitably. So you've got to be able to understand where value is in the marketplace and how you're going to deliver that value. And then you got to be able to create a win-win situation because it's not sustainable for you if you're taking a loss. A lot of times what happens in professional services firms is you price negotiate. You take a price cut of 10, 20, 30%, not sustainable, right? You've got to maintain your prices. And what I like about Todd is the ability to kind of hold tight on those price bands because otherwise you're going to be in trouble. So the short answer to this one is it gets reconciled because you do not take any customer actions to the marketplace where you're not also going to win. Now, in the short run, it's possible to kind of give up a little bit for a long-term win, but the idea is it has to make sense for you. It can't be winning just for the customer.
Right. We're actually selling value, not rates.
Yeah, I mean, a good illustration people always talk about is Nordstrom's. Nordstrom's took back the snow tires, right?
Yep.
That's a dumb idea. That's not like a smart example of good practice. That's a dumb idea, right?
Because you could return your snow tire.
You can return your snow tires, right? So it's like, why would anybody ever take back the products they get? Now, What Nordstrom could do is say, hey, listen, we don't sell no, but I'm going to get on the phone with Tom's Automotive Supply, and they may be able to help you. And then it's like, okay, now you're helping the customer. You're not giving up profitability. You're developing a better relationship. So when they come back to you for clothing or shoes, you're maybe in a better position.
Right. So Bernie, what strategies do you use to gather feedback from customers? How do you ensure it's meaningful and actionable? And what metrics do you think are important for measuring customer satisfaction?
Well, the good thing about these 3 questions is that I can answer them all in about 3 hours. So the good news, I'm going to be really very, very
I'm
tight.
impressed. I
And-
thought it was going to
3
be like
hours.
3 days.
Yeah. Well, I have my 3-hour version. I have my 3-day version. All right. So here's the primer. When you want to learn about customers, there's different ways that you do it. First off is you listen and you ask them questions, right? That's one way to do it, right?
Mhm.
The second way to do it is observing customers in their natural habitat and see what they do and how they do things, right? So, I mean, a good example of this is watching customers. Customers wouldn't tell you, here's an interesting data point. When women go shopping for retail clothing and they try on an outfit, they buy it a certain percentage of the time. So let's say you try the outfit and the outfit fits, right? When men go clothing shopping and they go into a store and they try on an outfit and it fits, men buy it 90% of the time, right? When women go in and try on an outfit and it fits and it looks good, they buy it about 10% of the time. So you would never ask people to tell you that data. You have to observe that.
Right.
Another data point in retail shopping is there's a runway. That is, people don't stop before the retail store. They actually run into the retail store, go about 30 feet into the store, and then stop and orient. Where the hell am I and where do I go? Right. So where do you have the baskets for people? Do you have the baskets out front or do you have the baskets right where they stop? Right. So you kind of think about ways, and that's an observation. The third way we learn about markets is experimentation. We run some experiments. So in today's world, Netflix does a lot of A/B testing. The reason Netflix looks the way it does is they do hundreds of A/B testing where they say, let's put the recommendation list here. Let's put it here. Let's put new movies here. Let's put new movies here, right? So they're constantly running these tests. And we do that all the time. We may not call it tests, but we constantly are testing things in the marketplace. You guys will pitch in the marketplace and say something to a client. If all of a sudden it works, it's like, hey, guess what? That's an A/B test. Next time I'm going to say the same thing, right? So, so we're constantly testing stuff to find out whether. So you may have a conversation with a client. Would you like this? And they say, no, I don't want that. I'm like, okay, great. I'm not going to. So you're constantly kind of learning. So think about this. You're listening, you're observing, and you're experimenting. All 3 are necessary.
Wow. Okay. So we're going to have to think about how we can run our own A/B tests. Never really thought about that
Right.
for our sales team.
Todd is a platform to run a bunch of.
That's
A/B
right.
tests.
100%.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Got it. Cool. All right.
Yep.
All right. Now, Bernie, can you describe some examples of companies that are truly customer centric and what were the outcomes? What were the results?
So one interesting thing that's also available now, and it started to emerge as practice, starting maybe 15 years ago, is co-creation with customers. You co-create with customers. What's interesting is when I say that, you think of co-creation in terms of the products and service at the end, but you co-create all the way through. So for example, a lot of us, when you order stuff and it comes through UPS and it's tracking, you're now in supply chain management. You're basically tracking your customer, finding what's going on, right? You're watching that process sort of unfold, right?
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times what happens is customers are now moving. There's a great article in the New York Times this week around Mattel and Lego. Mattel and Lego both provide opportunities on their platform for their customers to suggest products. And they basically, and I'm going to get the number wrong here, but once you have over 200 people, so let's say I present a product concept to Lego, and let's say at least, and there's a number, I can't remember what it is, but let's just say it's 200 people that like it, or is it 10,000 or 2,000? There's some very large number of people. When they like it, it qualifies to go into production. And that particular user then gets the guide, the production process, and co-create with the designers at Lego.
Interesting. When you said co-creation, the first thing that came to mind was Todd, because, we've got clients solutioning, thinking about how they want to build teams.
That is co-creation,
right?
That is co-creation. That's a really good illustration of that. Yeah. And Mattel's does the same thing in terms of product designs and offerings in the marketplace. That is, they let customers determine. Now, obviously, this is a very small percentage of the overall innovation, but you think of what it means to signal to customers, right? So, for example, Mattel, Barbie's always been an interesting franchise. It's had different parts of its history.
Right.
Now it's kind of back. So you want to have people say, what's the next Barbie? Well, how do you who should, and Barbie has this massive fan club, right? So you can sing the same thing in the context of Harley Davidson and stuff or others, right? Where you have a massive fan club that wants to help co-create, right? So this notion of co-creation is a really important part. It shouldn't just be me meeting your needs. Why don't we do it together, right? In some way, shape, or form. And you guys do this with the Todd platform, but you also do it as you think about your proposal process and how you do it and how you lay it out. It's always a co-creation with customers, right?
That
So
is.
we can
the
start
process
measuring
itself.
success when people start tattooing the Todd on their body.
Did I already have one of those? Should I
There
show?
you go.
I don't want to show that, but I did. Yeah, I do.
Love it.
There it is.
All right. Next, Jacque is going to have
Yeah, so
barber shave Todd.
yeah, right. No, that's a lawn. I want a lawnmower, but okay, that's a topic for another day. How do you ensure that all departments within an organization are aligned with a customer-centric approach?
So the very first important point here is that you do need to have all departments aligned.
Absolutely.
So what's interesting is sometimes people think, well, we're going to let the commercial side, the marketing and sales guys to be in control of what's happening in terms of customer dialogue, customer understanding. But if that's the case, they're going to bring that information and look at it just from the lens of their function. So what you need to do is bring the intelligence back in and get meetings established on a regular cycle with other parts of the organization so everybody can see the customer and see how they potentially touch them. So whether it's accounting in terms of billing, whether it's finance in terms of how it is that you actually finance a particular project, whether it's folks kind of on the R&D side in terms of product design, whether it's the operations side about what customers are looking for in terms of cycle management, every department can lean in on this issue, right? So in every department should,
Right.
and at a minimum, they should hear the voice of the marketplace and understand the second order effects on their particular department. So it's critically important for everybody to lean in on what this issue is.
The way Harley did that was they actually took their engineers out to all those rallies and let them talk to the people who are the owners.
It's,
right?
it's a perfect way to go about doing it.
So to truly be customer centric, every department has to have a specific role in that.
Absolutely. In fact, there was an article this week, again, Howard Schultz, Starbucks, worrying about where Starbucks is going right now. And he said one of the critical things that has to happen is our board members need to be out meeting with baristas, meeting in the stores.
The board members.
The board
Well,
members.
yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope each of the board members enjoys coffee, their main product.
And if not, they're on the wrong board.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So I think we have a question that's in the
Let's
in
check
the
out the
chat,
questions
right?
in the
Yeah,
chat.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the first one is from Liz, and it's how does Drucker approach differ or align to the contemporary philosophy of customer experience, or what we refer to as CX?
So a lot of Drucker's writings are identifying the core issue. In this case, the idea of being deeply understand customers in ways that they may not even understand what they're looking for. So that's what Drucker's all about. Learn about, understand, and deeply know customers. Now, what's happened is literature's emerged at the time of Drucker, right? So customer experience management typically is seen as the subjective response of customers to the overall offering, end-to-end offering of that particular company. So if it's Nike, the customer experience at Nike could be my experience with the brand, my experience interacting with the brand, my experience going to Nike stores, my experience talking to other people wearing Nike stuff. If I'm an athletic team, talking about how well the athletic equipment works, all this kind of stuff could be, right? And the product itself, right? So the product becomes part of the customer experience, but think of the end-to-end journey that customers are on, or their relationship with the particular brand. So what's evolved since Drucker is a more precise articulation of different ways to think about this. But the core idea of being customer-centered originated with Drucker. But we see it. I mean, that's the way it should be, right? I mean, we should see the evolution of thinking.
I agree with that. I think it's one of those things where you just to think about how profound Drucker's writings were is if you trace a lot of the spec, it all leads right back to Peter.
So much of it does.
Yeah.
I mean, another illustration off to the side a little bit, but there's this concept in the academic literature called the ambidextrous organization. And the basic idea of ambidexterity is I need to be able to exploit, they call it exploit what I'm currently doing, and then I need to explore. I need to exploit my current offerings and then explore to the future, right? Drucker called that continuity and change 70 years ago. And somehow people forgot about Drucker. So Drucker articulated that idea very, very clearly. And in fact, he argued 20% of management time needs to be spent on the future, 80% on the present, right? He always talked about managing in 2 time periods, right? But somehow all the academics have missed that. And that's true of a lot of his work where you could trace back this thinking back to his book called Managing Results was the very first book on business strategy. But he
Right,
should have called it business strategy. They
Right.
called it managing results.
So-
People missed
right.
what was going on. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of this. But again, Drucker initiates the ideas, thinks about the ideas, and then you see this massive literature that follows from it, which is the
People
way-
amplify on
yeah,
it. Yeah.
which is the way it should be.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Let's see. Do we have time to cover more customer questions? All right. So we're going to need some help because we can't fully read them from here at the studio.
Right.
Can somebody read the questions to us, please? So share them with us.
Oh, super. Thank you.
Okay, there we go.
All right. They're gonna let me read, AJ. So tell me about customer electricity. I think AJ's got to answer this one, I think.
Yeah.
I'm happy to answer it, but we lost our source of static electricity.
Yeah.
We did.
Maybe we could play AC/DC again. I don't know.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was just we thought that'd be a really cool way to make it exciting.
Okay, so
Customer
I've got a correlated
Yeah.
concept. So it's
Yeah.
the idea that was written about back in the 1990s called the customer apostle. And the
Oh.
customer apostle loves the brand so much,
Yep.
they
Yeah.
can't wait to share the word,
Apple.
right? So you can't, if you ask me about Thurlow socks, or you're
Mhm.
asking about good grip tools in the kitchen, I can't wait to talk about that stuff.
Mhm.
You know,
Right.
there used to be a place called Bed Bath and Beyond. It doesn't exist anymore, but there used to be this store, and you go to the wall and there'd be the 85 good grip and things. And by the way, people that are I could guarantee you probably 20% of the audience knows exactly what I'm talking about. 80% has no idea. That's perfectly fine. That's a segmentation issue, right?
Right.
I'm talking to the 20% that really care about what I'm concerned about. And those folks know what I'm saying.
So the
Same way
good
for you with
the
guitars,
good
yeah,
grip
right?
cucumber
Absolutely.
peeler.
Yeah, the
Absolutely.
cucumber peel. Yes, exactly. Thank you.
All right. So SMA will be at BPC in early June. What do you recommend to companies attending large customer-facing events such as customer centricity in hectic environments?
So here's the idea, guys. Think about customer insight the following way. There's a bunch of insight you need to have. Call that table stakes. Are customers concerned about pricing? They are. Who knew? Are they concerned about convenience? Yeah, they are. Are they concerned about service quality? Sure, they are. Are they concerned about reliability? Sure, they are.
Mhm.
We need to know that stuff. We need to know it deeply.
Mhm.
But now you have to ask yourself a very simple question. What do I know about the marketplace and about customers that others don't know that I can take action on and make money on? What do I know that others don't know that I can take action on and make money? That's the question. So when you go to these large trade shows, you're going to be walking around, poking around and saying, what am I learning here that other people aren't learning about? Right.
Right.
That's what you're going to be thinking of.
So here's one that I'm actually interested in your answer on. And it's what are your thoughts on the customer's always right? And I can almost guess.
Yeah.
what your answer is gonna be.
The answer is that's incorrect.
That's right.
So
That's right.
the customer oftentimes doesn't know what they don't know. There's a danger here, because customers will say, here's what I want. And very sophisticated sales folks and very sophisticated marketers will begin to query questions around that. Well, why do you want that? Why are you thinking about it? What are you looking for? What are you looking for? And you're probing all around it. The same way with a doctor would probe, can you raise your shoulder if your shoulder's sore at night? Can you sleep on your shoulder? Can you rotate your shoulder? And at the end, the doctor says, rotator cuff, right? So good sales reps, are able to query things where all of a sudden you sort of diagnose, then you offer that and say, hey, here's what I think's happening to you. 1, 2, 3. And they say, yes. And you say rotator cuff, right? Same way when the customers are actually, you think they're wrong, you can't just say, hey, you're wrong. Otherwise you're going to have door slam in your face. You got to query them a bunch and then lead them in a direction where they say, I didn't think about it that way. That's probably what I should do. Right.
Right.
That's a good way to think about it.
Well, so do we have time for one more question?
One more question.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Let's see. There's a bunch of them here. So let's see. This one's actually one for you and I, AJ. So AJ and Jacque, how do you capture the soft side information from the field to assist with customer centricity? And Bernie, you have, I'm sure you'll have a perspective on this as well.
Soft side. So I presume that means kind of the overall demeanor of your customer. And
I think it's the things that it's reading between the lines,
Right.
right? It's the things,
yeah,
the implications, not the actual words.
Yeah.
It's we often call it, I think in our business, is the idea of customer relationships, developing, that customer
so
intimacy.
yeah, okay, all right, yeah. So I think part of that Bernie already addressed around being artful in terms of queries, right? We have had some really great successful examples where you could tell when when you're in a conversation with a customer, where they're struggling with a concept and they think, they ask you to provide a proposal on something, right? And then in your intuition that it's the wrong thing to ask for, right?
Right.
And so if you can actually read between the lines and try to really you can actually just pick up on that bit that says, yeah, the customer's actually struggling with this,
Right.
and that's why they may have asked for the wrong thing. That's kind of, I think maybe that's what the question goes to. And we've done that a number of
Yeah.
times.
My head went to actually
Yeah.
understanding customer hot buttons,
Mm.
things that may not find their way into the RFP.
For sure.
Right.
Yeah.
As part of, developing customer intimacy is important, being
Yeah.
customer centric,
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think lots of times too, you can test some of that. So you're listening very carefully over the course of an hour. And at the end, you try and organize and structure. You say, it seems like we've covered 3 areas here. We've covered area A, B, and C. Does that sound right to you? And then they say yes. And you say, well, let me come back to you where they're thinking about it. But right now off the cuff, I think we might go this way with A, but B and C, I need to think a little bit more about. But now you've basically said, I've heard them, I understood them, I've thought about it, I've structured our conversation. So I've already added value. And now the question is, what's the answer ultimately going to be? And you could tease them a little bit by saying, I think A may go this way, but so it is a dialogue. It is a test that I've understood it and collect. So that's part of that understanding. I understand where they're coming from,
And I think that's particularly important when you're dealing with a new client.
Yeah.
A client who doesn't have experience working with
Yeah.
us as a
Yeah.
firm.
Okay, so
Right.
here's one from,
Well, do we have time for one more?
yep.
One more.
for,
Okay, let's squeeze it in.
From Dr. Berman. And
Okay.
he's saying, what is the most interesting aha you have had from observing customer behavior in their natural habitats?
Natural habitat.
I like that. Free ranging customers.
Yeah. So so from my individual perspective, I think one of the interesting things, this is a long time ago, Alan, this is back when we first started working with Doblin Group at Monitor, and they would do a lot of observational stuff, a lot of video, a lot of taping of stuff and so forth. They had a really interesting observation of kids at McDonald's. Now McDonald's didn't take their recommendation, but what they said was lots of times when you show up with your 2 or 3 or 4-year-olds, and let's assume you have a couple of them, and let's say you're a single parent and you walk into McDonald's, what's happening? Those kids are going crazy, right?
They want to go straight to that ball bin.
Right. If you put like a fish tank or something in the counter where you're going up to, and so the kids are now entertained while you can place the order.
Oh.
Again, this is 20 years ago, right?
Oh.
So this is back when you had the place orders and you had to interact with a person as opposed to kind of interacting with a screen now, right?
Yeah.
But back in the day,
Yeah.
a pain point could be, how do I keep control of the kids early enough? And the answer is
Enough to
do
make the
something.
order.
Yeah, in order to make the order,
But
right?
see, now parents just say, play asteroids. Stop.
Well, you get today, but
Well,
20 years ago, right? This
yeah.
is really, or they said
Interesting.
the other option is drop the counter, get rid of the counter,
Right.
so the kids
Oh.
can see the fry machine,
Right.
right? And that might be enough to
Cool.
say.
Right.
But that's an example of watching people and seeing the complexity of when they enter the store. It's pandemonium when you have small kids.
Right.
And
But
at your point, maybe you drop them off in the ball
But I think the latter has actually happened. You go to a lot of these places. I've always wondered why the counters were so low.
yeah,
There you go.
there you go.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Fantastic.
All right.
Okay. So now, Bernie, this has been an incredibly interesting session.
Yep.